welcome in. This is another brand new edition of the 9-on-1 Soccer Podcast. As you can see, we've got a guest tonight. I'll get him in here in a second. Just want to remind everybody that, yes, I'm your host. I'm Lawrence Dockery. You can find me on Twitter at L.93. You can find the 9-on-1 Soccer Podcast on Twitter at 9-on-1 Soccer Pod. Just search us on Facebook as well. It's just 9-on-1 Soccer. Of course, we're part of Bluff City Media. So you can find Bluff City Media on Twitter at BluffCity_media. And, of course, if you're watching this, that means you're on YouTube and have found us that way. But if you're not subscribed, I suggest that you do so. Also, please like the video and comment underneath it. It helps drive traffic. Now, without further ado, it's time to introduce our guest for tonight. The U.S. men's national team is playing the Nations League semifinals tomorrow and hopefully the Nations League final on Sunday. So we brought in a U.S. men's national team historian. His name is Travis. You can find him on Twitter at USMNT_historian. Travis, how are you doing tonight?
Great. How are you doing this evening, Lawrence?
I'm doing just fine. We meet in much happier circumstances here on the video than we did when we did in person at Copa America in Atlanta.
It was very nice meeting you then. Obviously, the defeat in Atlanta to Panama, nonetheless, was a bummer. But, I mean, still great to meet you then and still great to be talking now.
That's one of the things that some people don't understand is that you can make friends on Twitter. It was nice to be able to meet somebody in real life that I had only ever interacted with on Twitter. And, of course, your Greg Berhalter stickers and the koozies, and it was all fantastic. And so tell people where they can find you.
Mostly on Twitter at USMNT_historian. Recently, I've started a little blog and newsletter. It's called National Team Notebook. You can find the blog at nationalteamnotebook.blogspot.com, but I'll update that domain at some point. And yeah, usually just a lot of Google Docs and on Twitter, just posting stuff about on this day, just trying to stay updated. And I enjoy reading books from the past. That's kind of been the main thing that's kind of fueled some of the stuff prior to 1985 or so. There's not a lot of information before like this present day era.
Mm-hmm. So that's one of the how I found you is whenever you're on this day in like 1992, such and such player scored such and such goal in whatever game. Mm-hmm. And I always am fascinated to find old clips like that when I see them floating around, because, if you're anything of a U.S. men's national team fan, the bare bones history of it. Like, they went forever. Yeah, they beat England in 1950, and then they were gone from the World Cup forever, and then they went back in 1990, and here we are today. But it's I guess the sausage making the process of how that happened. How did you get into being a U.S. men's national team fan? First off.
I guess it was back in 2002, World Cup, Japan, Korea. Waking up, I was 11 then. Dad got me up for it. I was playing soccer as a kid at the time, but like never dove into any professional stuff. We're in the Midwest, so Cardinals were the big thing. And then the run happened, and I got to watch about half the matches waking up before school, and then watched through 2006 and 2010, mostly World Cup and like Gold Cup stuff, not as much qualifying. And then once I kind of got into college, it started to pick up more and more. And then by about 2020, right before the pandemic, I was just looking for a new hobby of something else to do. So I was like, I guess we'll just start tracking USA stuff and seeing what I can find on the internet. And then the pandemic hit, which I guess was a perfect time for research, because I watched a lot of old matches, just kind of filled my time reading and watching and kind of writing stuff down, and, fell in love with the team right before the big, 2022 cycle.
And, it's funny you mentioned the 2002 World Cup, because that's when I became a fan of the game. And I was only in, let's see, so that was 2002. So I think I was in between second and third grade, maybe, or in between first and second grade. So I was 7, 8, however old you are in second grade. And, we lived in Las Vegas at the time. And so we were up really, before the sun was up. And if memory serves, we never had cable growing up. And if memory serves, Telemundo is free over the air or it was in 2002. Like it's just like a regular and rabbit ears channel. And so we were able to we watched them all in Spanish, and they had no earthly idea what was going on. But the U.S. did well, and we got a lot of Irish heritage in the family. And Republic of Ireland went to the round of 16 at that World Cup. So that was a lot of fun watching that, and that's really what got me into being a fan. And then of course, once you got to about 2010 is when I was just kind of like you said, kind of locked in on a regular basis. With being able to keep up with not just the World Cup, but with, the tournaments in between when the qualifiers were and that sort of thing. So you mentioned being, once the COVID hit, trying to track some of this stuff. What is it that led you to do that? Was that something where you looked and there was kind of like a void in that space where nobody else was doing this, or were you just for shits and giggles, for lack of a better term, decided, I'm going to look this up, and one thing led to another, and then you just couldn't stop?
I mean, it's a combination of both, to be honest. Following the team in 2019, that Gold Cup and the loss to Mexico, and then the Nations League leading up to that, I was on Twitter a lot, but not posting or not really just reading along and just being man, it'd be a nice thing as part of this space to have more history stuff. Because again, we remember stuff from the early 2000s, and you hear and read about 94 and 98 and a little bit of 90, but nothing really else. So it's just I wonder what else is in there. And I figured that on this day was the easiest place, because they played games throughout the year in different times, and it just kind of snowballed from there. The amount of information that you can find on the internet through the New York Times and newspaper archives is crazy. And the more I search, the more you really can find.
So has there been anything that's jumped out and surprised you where you're oh, I didn't know that, that's crazy, or something that you were ooh, really? I didn't know that.
A lot of the crazy stuff really kind of happens in the early 1920s and stuff, the soccer wars of that time with leagues and outlaw leagues, and just stuff that you would never have heard about. Stuff in the 70s and 80s. In the 80s, they qualified for the Olympics and then had to boycott, everything going on over there. And that was the first time they had qualified for the Olympics in a little while. And it's just you hit momentum a lot, and then stuff gets blocked. And, it's the stuff of now that we kind of still feel is the stuff that was happening 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago.
There's that old saying, there's nothing new under the sun.
U.S. soccer is still kind of the same.
The more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yeah, kind of in our own way, even back 100 years.
So, what is maybe your favorite discovery in all of this? Is it a clip? Is it a story? Is it a certain player that's been lost to history? What's been your favorite discovery in all of this?
Wow, that's some of the stuff from the 89 qualifying before the Trinidad game, and all of those 1-0 goalless draws. Understanding the difference between 2 points and 1 point, because they didn't have 3 points back then. It was kind of that was kind of eye-opening. And then watching into the 94, just those players, Thomas Dooley coming into the mix, the way Hugo Perez was kind of the veteran leading out into that squad. Just the Lawless and Balboa partnership at center back that kind of gets lost throughout history, that, wasn't, fully mentioned in stuff that I was reading initially.
Have you read the book New Kids in the World Cup? It came out about
I have not.
2 years ago, I think.
Yeah, I've seen him on Twitter as well. I have not bought that book, but I feel like that'd be a great addition to the little collection that I have.
It was really, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a great read. Again, these were I thought I knew a lot about the history, and
but this was one, like some of the players that they included. I was like, I've never heard of this guy before, but now I have. And then you'll see them pop up here and there, and then we all know the shot heard around the world, the Paul Caligiuri goal against Trinidad and Tobago. But you mentioned it a second ago, the qualifying process that led up to that point. And a lot of those games were played in your neck of the woods up there in St. Louis, which has been a historic. That's totally not related to anything that we're going to discuss tonight. But I have mad respect for St. Louis City because they are the one MLS club that seems to value the history of soccer before their arrival on the scene, and is vocal about supporting and wanting to play in the Open Cup. So St. Louis has always had a great soccer history. If I'm not mistaken, I think most of the 1950 World Cup team that beat England played at SLU. Is that right?
About half lived in St. Louis. Not sure about the facts on SLU, but they lived in the Hill, which is a St. Louis neighborhood. A couple neighborhoods over from mine.
Close enough for a Memphis audience. That's close enough.
Right.
But yeah, so I respect the hell out of St. Louis City, and I actually had one of the regular listeners of the show was up there for the St. Louis City game this past weekend.
That's awesome. I mean, 1-0 victory was
over what was Seattle? They played Seattle, I think. All right, so on to less happy things. We mentioned it at the start, was Copa America. Now, the only Copa America game that I went to was the Panama game at Atlanta. That's just it's 5 hours from here. Unfortunately, I stayed at quite literally a flea bag motel and came home with bed bugs. It's an entirely different discussion. But it was convenient. It was walkable to the stadium, and it was relatively cheap. And I should have known better, but whatever. It makes for a good story now. You got to go to multiple Copa America games. Did you go to all 3 U.S. Copa America games?
Just the last 2, Panama and Uruguay.
Okay. Well, we met at the Panama game, and that was, again, super cool to meet Twitter people in the real world. Of course, we all know what happened there. I think what gets lost in that is that, yes, Tim Weah got a red card for punching a dude in the back of the head. Yeah, we all know that, and we thank him for his service. But the U.S. went up 1-0 like 5 minutes after that. And I think that gets forgotten. And then for some reason, Greg Berhalter did Greg Berhalter things and found a way to lose the game, as was his habit. And then lost the group stage finale against Uruguay, became the first manager of a Copa America host nation to get bounced in the group stage, making history, changing American soccer forever. What was it like for you walking out of the stadium? I've seen the video that you posted, but what was the I don't know, the atmosphere, the energy, the mood, whatever you want to call it? I have to imagine, just based on the video, there was a lot of anger, and the video, I bet, probably doesn't even do it justice.
I mean, it was somber, for sure. You could feel like the sadness coming over as like the final 15 minutes. I mean, we were pressing for a goal, but it never felt like it was coming. And then the boos rained out right after the final whistle. The players didn't really stay on the field much after. People kind of left pretty quickly. And yeah, the Fire Greg chants were being rung out as we were walking down the path. And then in the parking lot, just, you could just feel it. You could just feel that, like, something that could have been special coming into it was not. Uruguay was the better team.
And it's so frustrating. And it's in the moment, it's so frustrating because it's going to be your probably last best chance to have high level quality opposition in meaningful games. And yes, I understand we're going to take the Gold Cup seriously. I get that. But let's be real. Playing some of the best teams in South America is not the same as playing middling teams in CONCACAF. It's just not the same. Right. That doesn't mean we shouldn't go out and try to win the Gold Cup comprehensively. It's just an acknowledgement of reality. But in the moment, it's frustrating because it's a huge wasted opportunity. And watching your team lose sucks. But I firmly believe nothing will ever change my mind on this. That if I firmly believe if they somehow, some way rob Peter to pay Paul and get out of that group and then lose 5-0 to Colombia in the quarterfinals like Panama did, you will never convince me that Greg Berhalter is not still the U.S. coach today.
I mean, yeah, I guess getting out of the group would have saved his job. Clearly, the 5-1 Colombia the first time really kind of
I forgot about that.
Did put the pressure on. Well, I got to be there for that one too, and that you want to talk about a weird atmosphere. I mean, the Colombians were the ones out there in full force, and I mean, they just had a party.
I bet. If my team was winning 5-1 in their house, I'd be having a party too.
Right.
You know, that's not something we get to do often as U.S. fans, is go into somebody's house and beat them, let alone 5-1. But out of the ashes, a phoenix rose. And, you know, it's funny because I don't know how much of a college football fan you are, but I always liken this to back in the day when there used to be just one national signing day for college football in February. Oh, yeah. And your school was in on one player, and he had all the hats lined up on his table, and everybody's just sitting there like refreshing. That was me all day at work, like because they said we're gonna let you know on Wednesday whether we fired him or kept him, and I was just like all day just refresh, please let him be gone, and then he was gone, and it was just this hugely cathartic moment, like it was some combination of joy and relief, and it was a catharsis, and he was gone. And then obviously it becomes who's next. And I was on the Klopp train. I want a Klopp, and it sounds like they actually did maybe halfway say, hey, do you at least want to take the phone call? And he's like, nah, I'm good. But we landed. I was convinced that it was going to be the same 6 names that every American soccer writer was throwing out: Steve Cherundolo, Wilfred Nancy, Patrick Vieira, which was incredible. Well, he managed the New York City FC, and it never occurred to anybody that they could try to do better than that. And they went out and they did better than that, and they hired Mauricio Pochettino. When that happened, was that for you, was that a jaw hit the floor kind of moment?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I always wish we would get somebody with a big name, and just to see Mauricio Pochettino, the Premier League pedigree, just kind of, got a pep in the step.
He went to a Champions League final. I mean, have we ever had any manager like we hired Jurgen Klinsmann, and I don't hate the Klinsmann tenure like so many other people do, but like the closest. Klinsmann was the closest to what we have with Pochettino in terms of the panache and the cachet that his name carried, because of what he did with Germany at the 2006 World Cup. Because Germany was always just this machine at the World Cup, but people forget that at Euro 2004 they were a disaster. They were the worst team in the tournament, and so they're like, hey, we're hosting the World Cup. You're in charge. Don't embarrass us. And they went to the semifinals and lost an all-time game. And whatever happened at Bayern Munich happened at Bayern Munich. And then he was the U.S. coach, and he had this energy and this charisma and this belief. And after 2014, it all faded away. But there was that moment in time where it felt like anything was possible. And I think with Pochettino, we have that, but to an even higher degree.
I feel that. Interesting little note about Klinsmann is they wanted him initially after 2006 before they ended up hiring Bob Bradley. So then they went back and got their guy. So clearly that's kind of been the best, pedestal to what we've had for managers so far. And now that we have Pochettino, it does feel like there's a run that could be made, just because you can always find that lightning in a bottle, and for 1 month could really make it happen.
And here's the thing. What I'll say, it's a small sample size. He's been in charge for 6 games. He's won 5 of them.
Yeah,
and he's made the team fun to watch again. Because one of the most frustrating things about Greg Berhalter's tenure was that on paper, yes, his win-loss record was better than his win percentage better than anybody's we've ever had ever. So I mean, if that's something that you want to hang, if you're someone who doesn't watch soccer and just checks the box scores, that's what you can hang your hat on. But if you don't actually watch the games like we do,
Yeah.
you know, hey, you're up a man for 85 minutes against Trinidad and Tobago at home, and it's 0-0, and then you score 3 goals, bing, 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 bang, boom, and you just look at the oh, you won 3-0, and that looks good. Well, no, it was terrible until the last 10 minutes, and then the dam broke.
Yeah,
that has not been the. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that felt the same for the Uzbekistan game that was in St. Louis. Tim Weah scored early, and then 2 goals late make it look 3-0 when really they were kind of competitive, and that was Berhalter's first game back after the rehire. And then now looking back, they played in St. Louis against Jamaica and won 4-2, and it was basically the same players on the field, but a wildly different feel. The way that they were enjoying themselves seemed like a lot of fun.
And two things to address your points there. You mentioned the U.S. scoring early in that Uzbekistan game. I had a credential for the game that next month in Nashville against Ghana when they went up 4-0 in the first half, and one of those was the Gio Reyna indirect free kick goal in the penalty area, which I'd never seen before at the international level. Like as a referee, I've had that situation happen once or twice. But at the international level, like I've never seen that before. But that second half of that game was a complete nothing burger, like nothing. And granted, you're up 4-0, so it's natural to take your foot off the gas. I understand that, but it was a dreadful second half, and not that Ghana ever threatened, but it just we could have just packed it in and gone home at halftime. I had a 3-hour drive home. You mentioned the Jamaica game in the Nations League in November. I remember that first U.S. goal, yelling out loud in the living room and then putting it up on Twitter. That goal was the antithesis, the polar opposite of Berhalter ball. That was goalkeeper, midfielder, Pulisic, goal. 3 passes, goal, end to end in 5 seconds.
The movement, it just felt something different. The ball, we feel like we have the quality in the players, but like sometimes they feel a little more free, and probably without those kind of restrictions under Berhalter, they feel a little more free under Poch.
And that's the next thing I wanted to say is this generation of players. There's been a lot made about them, about how special they are, how they're going to be the golden generation, the promised generation, whatever you want to call it. It's true to me because we've never had this many players playing this many minutes at high-level European clubs. But as much as I detest Greg Berhalter and despise him for robbing me of the joy of watching this team for 7 years, you as the players, allegedly, and very vocally and repeatedly, now whether that was gun to the back of your head, wink, wink at the camera, you were like, no, we wanted him back. This is our guy. Let's rock and roll. And then just did nothing, right? So at some point, you as the players have to take ownership of this. I think where we're at now is Pochettino's come in and said, no players council, no special kumbaya ukulele team meeting. Like, no, it's a real soccer outfit. You guys are high quality players. Go out there and show it, or I'll get somebody who will. It's just been a breath of fresh air. And I do wonder, I'm sure U.S. Soccer was very aware of all of the criticisms and the venom and the vitriol that we all had for Greg. So I do wonder if some of the stuff they've been putting out is just to say, look how different it is. Even if that's true, you just watch. You watch the way the players move. You watch how quick everything is. Like I said, they're fun to watch again. And at no point under Greg Berhalter were they fun to watch. Even the high point of the Greg Berhalter era was the summer of 2021 when you won the Nations League and then the Gold Cup back-to-back, right? And 5 of those 6 Gold Cup wins were 1-0 scorelines. 4 of those 5 1-0 scorelines were goals scored in the 80th minute or later.
Right.
That's not fun. Like, that's winning. And ultimately, if we get to a World Cup and 1-0 our way to a World Cup title, you're not going to hear me say anything bad about it because it's a World Cup title. But we've won the Gold Cup before and done it. Look, we talked about Jurgen Klinsmann, 2013. They scored 6 goals a game at that Gold Cup. That was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
No, at no point, even when they were winning at a high level under Greg Berhalter, it wasn't fun. And Pochettino's made this team fun again.
I mean, even to further your example, that Honduras game in the Nations League semifinal had to be won by P-Folk in like the 85th, 6th minute. So, I mean, everything was kind of just like grinded out until you can kind of find some at the end, which I wouldn't kind of expect to see us do that against opponents that were better than.
Exactly. And
So
that brings us to the Nations League. Now, this is a competition that the U.S. has never not won. It's been contested 3 times. We've won it 3 times. There's really, and the problem with the Nations League is this, and this isn't, I can't lay this blame at U.S. soccer. I don't even know that I can really lay this blame at CONCACAF. I think this, like, UEFA was tired of the rest of the world getting to play their teams, and so they created the Nations League, so everybody else was just like, well, shit, I guess we got to do that too because we can't get the games. It's helped raise the floor, but it's lowered the ceiling, I think, for the top teams. But the problem with the Nations League is, especially now that you've won 3 in a row, it's you better win this, because I don't want to hear about you losing a heartbreaker in the Nations League semis or in the final. Like, you better go out there and win this, right?
Yeah, this is, I mean, these are the games that are the most competitive now that the Nations League exists. I mean, we kind of turned our focus away from the Gold Cup. Initially, 2019, I really liked the Nations League. I was just like another excuse to have international games that mean something, because we don't always get that with just friendlies outside of, World Cup qualifying. And, now that we've won it, the 3 times, it's been great. And it's been kind of the fuel for like what the first team can really look like on, the, real stage. But, they have to show up again here Thursday against a Panama team that they have not been playing against well of late.
Well, and that was the next point. That's a perfect little segue. There is, we owned Panama for the longest time, like dominated them. Like we lost to them once ever, and that was a Gold Cup group stage game in 2011 because Chris Wondolowski, standing on the goal line, somehow couldn't put the ball in the goal. Stop me if you heard that before. But
right,
the Greg Berhalter era saw the U.S. lose to Panama 3 times in 4 games. And then, you lost in Panama during World Cup qualifying. Then you beat them at home, and then you lost to them in the Gold Cup. And technically that was BJ Callahan, but let's be real, Greg had already been rehired, and that roster had his fingerprints all over it. Lost him in that Gold Cup final in San Diego. And then you lose to them in Copa America. And, I had this written down. You may or may not remember, I kind of went viral on Twitter after the Panama game for asking if his job should be on the line. That wasn't the first one that I wanted to ask. I had several written down, and I figured, I got to be a little bit professional here. But it did enter my mind because, the whole thing was, we're going to change American soccer forever, right? And my question was going to be, I had it written down, I wish I still had it, was, you said the goal is to change American soccer forever, and you have now lost 3 out of 4 games to Panama. Is that part of changing American soccer forever? Oh, man, you thought Twitter went wild with what I did ask. But
yeah, you would have been shut down fairly quickly after that one.
Yes. So that gives me pause. Plus, even when we were beating Panama on a fairly regular basis, especially in the Gold Cup, those games are ugly, disgusting, horrendous soccer games. They're rock fights. They beat the hell out of you. They're physical. They're maybe dirty. It's just ugly. It's not attractive soccer. Fortunately, I think we've moved past. We've kind of put the panic in a rearview mirror, because Pochettino's first game was a win against Panama. Granted, it was just a friendly, but that was another one that was not radically dissimilar from how a lot of the Greg Berhalter games went, where it was 1-0 for the longest time, and then Pepe scores in the 91st minute or whatever. Is there? I have this slight measure of trepidation just because they make the game so nightmarish. Do you have any concern about this game against Panama on Thursday?
Yes. Just, losing even like Anthony Robinson's probably my biggest concern, but like just we're not at full strength. And even when we've been at full strength, they've been a real thorn in our side. Even the qualifying game at Panama was kind of, a real, I mean, we didn't take that one seriously with the way the team rotated. And then, to qualify for the World Cup, they did take it seriously. So the hope is that we're closer to that home qualifier in Orlando than we are to,
you can say Orlando and be right at least twice a year. So.
You're right. I was like, I think so. But yeah, it's just there's plenty of concern, just the way that they're going to line up and the way that they kind of pester us and get us off our game, not completing passes. They're going to make it hard for us, and it's just going to be how we adapt or how we actually force the game to them.
Where are they at in World Cup qualifying? I've tried to look at some of the World Cup qualifying, and like the format for all of these different confederations, with the exception of South America, because it's just everybody plays everybody twice, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. But there's like a bunch of weird little like 3-team groups in CONCACAF or something like that, and Europe's all jacked up, and I would like to know who has a chance. But do we know is Panama doing well in World Cup qualifying right now, or are they stinking it up?
I am unsure. I can't say I've been looking at the rest of the federation when it comes to qualifying now that we have 3 automatics. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's probably a little bit easier path. I think we get 3 other CONCACAF teams, so it's probably a little easier path for them.
I think CONCACAF still gets its 3.5. That 4th team goes into the playoff with one year it was New Zealand, and then I think another year it was Peru maybe, or Australia, or I don't know who they did the playoff against. But so whatever happens Thursday, they will play either Mexico or Canada. And while a game against Mexico is always an enticing affair, which is why the federations like to schedule friendlies outside of FIFA windows for El Clasico. Games against Canada have never really moved the needle all that much, despite what Greg Berhalter may have said about dominating a game they lost 2-0. Who do you think we would rather play? Assuming we win, well, regardless of whether we win or lose, we play either Mexico or Canada. Assuming we win, who would we prefer to face in the final? Who would you prefer that the U.S. face in the final?
Probably Mexico. I'm a little worried about Canada. I feel like they probably come in with us not being at full strength is probably the top team. So yeah, I probably would rather play Mexico. But if we're going to talk about a home field advantage that we would have in the final, I'd rather play Canada because those Mexican fans will be there.
And also, Jesse Marsh is still really mad at U.S. Soccer because he seems to think that he had the job locked up. Whether he did or didn't, I don't know. And then, they brought Greg back. So I'd be mad as hell if a job that I want, like a team that I had played for, that I wanted to coach them and had been rumored to coach them, and they had maybe told me, you might be the next coach. And then all of a sudden they're like, just kidding. We're bringing back the guy we already had. I'd probably be pretty pissed, and I'd spend a lot of time and effort talking about it. But, they smoked everybody in World Cup qualifying the last go around. Now they stunk up the joint in Qatar, but they did okay in that they went to made it to the Nations League final in 23. And it's like these have been death matches almost with Canada the last several times we've played them. These have not been walkovers. You tend to, maybe operate in a 2009 mentality of Canada, whatever, they're terrible at soccer. Like these guys have got good players now, and now they've got a real coach, and now they maybe just have a little bit of extra juice and a chip on their shoulder. as we saw during the Four Nations, the hockey tournament, a little bit of extra juice there. So I think I might be with you. And on the field, I would prefer to play Mexico. In the stands, I might prefer to play Canada, like you said. But I think either way, it's like the networks and CONCACAF and everybody wins, no matter because you either get US Mexico, which is everything that entails. That's the TV, that's the eyeballs, that's the butts and seats, that's all of that, or you get US and Canada and all of the extra that goes along with that now. So do you think that we get a fourth straight? I don't know if we do win the fourth straight. Never forget, after the last one, Greg Berhalter compared his team to Michael Jordan three-peating in the NBA Finals with the Chicago Bulls, and I wanted to punch my TV when he said that. I was just like, dude, get over yourself, man. There was a stretch of time where everybody was just so cringe. I think that was when Lindsey Horan called the U.S. women's fans stupid. And then Greg Berhalter comparing himself to Michael Jordan three-peating. I was like, bro, you weren't even here for the last one. Go away.
And we needed an own goal against Jamaica in that semifinal. We were a head away from not even being in the final. So don't give me that.
We gave up a goal in like the 32nd second, not the 32nd minute, the 32nd second.
That's fun to say. Like that.
Yeah. Do you? Let's do it this way. Not necessarily prediction, but in order of likelihood, rank the four teams and from highest chance of winning to lowest chance of winning the Nations League.
I'm gonna give. It'd be tough to bet against us, but I'm gonna probably give Canada the slight edge, just because it's tough winning the competition 4 times in a row, let alone the 3 that we did. Slight edge, and then probably us. The United States, and then probably Mexico, and then Panama. But Panama has been sneaky, and they've been the thorn in our side. And I'm not looking past this game on Thursday.
This definitely feels like, I don't know that wide open is necessarily the right way to describe it, but it has always felt like the U.S. and Mexico and everybody else.
Right.
And this kind of feels like any of these 4 teams, at least 3 of the teams, and maybe a 4th one, have a halfway decent chance of winning
it. We're in transition at this moment, so there's no certainty. The way Canada, the little surges that they've had, especially with Marsh. Mexico's always just kind of, the wild card about which team may show up and may not. And then Panama's been consistent over the last 3, 4, 5, 6 years. And they've, so any of these teams really do have a chance come tomorrow.
So I think that's takes care of that for the Nations League. Last couple of things before we shut it down for the night is obviously the Nations League is the focus of right now. But there's a very busy summer for the U.S. men's national team. They've got 2 friendlies and then hopefully 6 Gold Cup games. I'm sure that you'll get to see a Gold Cup game. You just look at what the Gold Cup venues are, and then which of those venues has U.S. Soccer already played a bunch of games at. There's 2 of them. So I think it's a safe bet that Austin and St. Louis will be Gold Cup group stage games for the U.S. men's national team. But remember, U.S. Soccer has no control over CONCACAF scheduling.
Or so they say.
Yes. And that's just like, Mexico has no say over CONCACAF scheduling, yet they always get to play in NFL stadiums in the American Southwest where a lot of people from Mexico live. It's just a happy little coincidence. Obviously I don't think the field is set for the Gold Cup. We don't know we just know the venues and that we're in it. But I think really to get.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say draws April 10th. I saw, so we will find out like groups locations for sure.
Okay.
Probably
So
stamps.
coming up soon.
Yep.
All right. So I don't want to. I don't know if this is putting the cart before the horse or whatever, but I feel like even still, even after 6 games of Mauricio Pochettino, like morale is still kind of low. It's rebounding, but it is not where I would like it to be. And larger societal awareness of the U.S. national team is still pretty low. I think with a World Cup coming up on home soil next year, we really need to win both of these trophies, and we need to look good doing so. And that, to me, means we got to go 10 for 10. We got 2 Nations League games, 2 friendlies, and 6 Gold Cup games. We got to win all 10 of them. So that would give us a 14-game winning streak, which would match what we had back at all-time high vibes for the U.S. men's national team was 2013. Because we did well in qualifying. Yeah. We won the Gold Cup. The World Cup was next year. We had a charismatic manager. I think we need to see a repeat of that because it's on home soil, and it's still kind of alarming to me how few people know that we're hosting the World Cup next year. So I feel like Nations League title, Gold Cup title, take care of business in the friendlies, 10 straight wins, which would make it 14, but dating back to the Jamaica game, the first Jamaica game, that would, I think, be 14 straight wins going into the September window. I think that we would have a lot of juice.
Yeah, that's the great way to think about it. We'll keep the half or the glass is full, not half full, it's full.
Hopefully it's
with that sort of scenario.
The cup overflows.
Yeah, overflowing with joy. No, we would take all of that. I do believe probably the bigger eyeball tournament will probably be the Gold Cup. Summer or less going on. I mean, we're about to hit March Madness. I don't think a lot of people even know that the game's tomorrow. We're on Paramount Plus. So you want to talk about awareness being at an all-time, not an all-time low, but not, in the consciousness of the casual. I had to tell a couple of my friends that even we were going to play Panama on Thursday.
And so I think the last point we want to make is for the U.S. needs to get the country excited prior to hosting the World Cup so that when the World Cup does happen, it is as big of a deal as possible. Now, the World Cup sells itself. I think at this point, FIFA could do absolutely nothing in terms of marketing or any of that, and it would still be, each World Cup would be bigger and better than the last one in terms of whatever metric you want to use. It's the World Cup. It sells itself. But I have a premise that I want to know if you agree or disagree with, and I think I know what your answer is going to be because we yell and scream about it on Twitter all the time. And then I have a kind of an open-ended question that I want to get your thoughts on. First, to get the whole country excited for the World Cup, do you think that objective would be better served if the U.S. men's national team was to play more games in places they either haven't been in a long time or have never been before?
Yeah. It would help in the areas where they haven't been in a while, more particularly, probably in the, bigger cities to get more eyeballs would probably be the better move. But obviously there's been plenty of, college towns and places that don't get hit when they have big stadiums and big populations that could really fall in love with a team that they just see once. As teams, in the early 90s with that 94 team, they did play a lot of friendlies all on home soil, all over the country. And they got a lot of interest just on the team, just being there and those people being able to see the players.
And, I think, and spoiler alert, I may or may not have a piece coming out following the conclusion of the Nations League regarding this matter. But, I think Pittsburgh, Indianapolis, Louisville, Birmingham, those are places that are decent-sized cities that have quality facilities that they either haven't been to in a really long time or have never been to before. And, we just saw a U.S. women's national team game in Louisville in October. I was there. And Louisville is a potential base camp city for a World Cup team in 2026. And so if you're just random person in Louisville or random person in Birmingham or Charleston, South Carolina, or Boise, Idaho, or Milwaukee, Wisconsin, or wherever, and you don't know anything about soccer, but hey, Team USA is playing here next week. Oh,
Right.
That's pretty cool. Why are they playing here? Oh, the soccer. There's a World Cup coming here next year. Oh, okay. I feel like, now, granted, I've been screaming about this since I think even before COVID, and so my pleas have fallen on deaf ears. But eventually a squeaky wheel gets grease, right?
Right.
This is one that I don't have an exact answer. Like, I think I know what the destination is, but I don't know what the route is to get there. And I'd be interested to get your thoughts on this. So we have perhaps a fabulous opportunity, and perhaps the best and maybe last opportunity to make soccer explode in this country the way that we all want it to, right? You have Gold Cup in 23 here, Copa America 24 here, Club World Cup 25, Gold Cup 25 here, World Cup 26 here, Olympics 28 here. That's just year after year after year after year. But it has to be more than just the games being played here. There has to be other stuff that goes along with that. And you are in a city that does not have World Cup games, just like I and most of this viewing audience is in a city that does not have World Cup games. How do you think, especially in cities like ours where the games aren't going to be played, how do you go about capitalizing on the World Cup being here? Because my end goal is ultimately, I think, and this is a nebulous end goal, it's more butts and seats, more eyeballs on TV, and more kids playing at the youth level.
Totally.
But what does more equal, and how do you get there? And I've had my own ideas, and it's got to start at the top with U.S. soccer, but it also has to kind of come from the bottom with the various individual teams, leagues, schools, colleges. There has to be some way to do it, and it can't just be, well, the World Cup's going to be here and it's going to take care of itself.
Right. I don't think we're gonna have to worry about kids not playing soccer. It seems like there will always be soccer. So it's just about, keeping those kids as they get older and becoming fans, as kind of we did. It'll be hard in in cities that don't have the World Cup, because we've gone to Kansas City, Atlanta, Dallas, and saw the advertisements for it 700 days, 800 days away, back in 2024. And, you could kind of feel it a little bit, but not as much. And then there's nothing, around St. Louis, but I don't know how US Soccer may advertise for it. But there's got to be something that at least, drags the casual fan. I mean, I have plenty of friends that St. Louis City as a team, but don't necessarily think about the national team, but then follow their Premier League team. And then that's kind of all they watch. So they have their local team and their Premier League team. And then I know other people who, just follow the national team or just follow stuff in Europe. And it's, I think you would have thought that winning games would have done it. But then I was at the Nations League final in Dallas last year, and that game against Jamaica was not full. And it was on a Thursday night. That could have been. So, yeah, this is an open-ended question that I really don't have a great answer for. I feel like the team winning would have helped, and I feel like Qatar getting out of the group helped. But then it just kind of goes by the wayside after, the next thing comes.
It's interesting, and I go back and forth, and some days I think it's going to be successful beyond our wildest dreams, and then some days I get myself into a panic thinking it's going to be a huge waste, and it's an opportunity wasted, and it's the last chance we'll get to really make something happen. And today I'm kind of in the middle on that. But I think
I was going to say, I do think that the impacts of 94 and 99 for the women's team really did push into the early 2000s. And with that, MLS kind of kept it sustained and, got it to the league where we are now. So I do think that obviously the World Cup being in your country will help and will garnish that sort of attention. It's just kind of how, the United States kind of maneuvers that, entertainment and how they excitement around soccer, because they've been trying to do it for years, back with Pele and the NASL, just saying like soccer is going to be the next big thing. Then the league folded by like the mid 80s. So you know, you just like they've been trying to do that. It's just kind of, I guess, pivoted into the right direction. I guess with 94 and 99 with the MLS, they did that.
It's just my big fear is there's that old saying, soccer is the sport of the future, and it always will be.
It still is.
That's and I don't know. And especially now that I'm saying we don't have a professional team. We don't even have a professional team. At least in St. Louis, you have St. Louis City. You've also got a pretty good, pretty well supported indoor outfit up there, if I'm not mistaken.
The Ambush, yeah.
Ambush, yeah. So fun fact, I think there's a guy that plays for the Ambush named Corey Adamson, who used to be a player coach here with the Memphis Americans in the NISL, which no longer exists because the league was run by a gentleman who I could say a number of unflattering things about. There might be legal ramifications to some of those unflattering things. But I think that'll do it tonight. Oh, let me finish my point before we do it tonight. But in Memphis, all we've got to hang our hat on now is the college programs, the men's and women's teams at the University of Memphis. And really, I think what a successful World Cup off the field it will look like is everybody goes and supports their local team, whether that's St. Louis City, whether it's an MLS team, whether it's a USL team, whether it's the national team, or a collegiate team. And I think we're running a little bit long here, but I've got a theory that college soccer is a great vehicle for getting non-soccer fans into soccer, just because it's already a brand that people are familiar with. Like, for example, in St. Louis, I was just looking up the stadium in St. Louis. SLU plays SIU Edwardsville there every year, and they get like 9,000 people. That's crazy to me.
Right. Yeah. And SIUE has their own stadium, and Herman Stadium for SLU. You know, the Herman Stadium fills out for like most of their games. Go to a handful every year, and it's always packed.
And so I would say this, if you're somebody that's watching this and you're wanting to be excited about the World Cup and get into the game following the World Cup, support your local team. And if your local team is an MLS, if your local team is the Seattle Sounders, great. If your local team is the Birmingham Legion, great. If you live in Starkville, Mississippi, and your local team is the Mississippi State Women's Bulldogs teams, go for it. The more people watching soccer at all levels, the better. Is that a reasonable assessment?
We can agree on that to conclude for sure.
Yes. All right. Well, I think that is going to wrap it up for us here tonight. Before we let you go, Travis, again, tell everybody where they can find you.
Mostly on Twitter, USMNT_historian. You can also find me writing at nationalteamnotebook.blogspot.com.
All right. I think that is going to do it tonight, everybody. Again, I'm your host, Lawrence Dockery. Find me on Twitter at LDoc93, 901 Soccer Podcast at 901 Soccer Pod, Bluff City Media at Bluff City_media. Over on Facebook as well. Just search 901 Soccer and just search Bluff City Media. And of course, subscribe to the Bluff City Media YouTube page and like and comment on this video, please. And thank you. We will talk to you next time.